Hey everyone, welcome to Off the Mat, a podcast about two women's experience in jiu-jitsu and how that translates into our lives off the mat. I'm Justine, a bit of a renegade, outdoor enthusiast, and a white belt in jiu-jitsu.
And I'm Karina, a full-time student, creative artist, and also a white belt on my way to becoming a black belt.
All right, welcome back to Off the Mat. We're super excited to be here with you today. Karina and I have been thinking about what to do for this episode for a couple weeks now, since we kind of knocked off a few of our first ideas we had. And
came up with a good one.
We came up with a good one.
Of course.
What we decided to talk about with you guys tonight is rolling.
Big deal over here.
Yeah, it's a term that probably most people outside of the jiu-jitsu community associate with drugs. Or maybe as a kid, rolling down
a hill,
right? I don't know what else.
Yeah, no, it really has no significance in real life other than for a jiu-jitsu person.
Yeah, and it's probably for a lot of people the most unknown and the most intimidating aspect of jiu-jitsu, a jiu-jitsu class, just kind of the whole martial arts as a whole.
And still is even, I mean, that's what competing is too, right? Like, you're just rolling, so it still is something that's high stakes, high anxiety, and so we kind of wanted to just introduce it, let y'all know our experiences with it,
what to expect, how to navigate it, especially, obviously this podcast is two women sharing their experiences in jiu-jitsu, and it's a male-dominated sport, so at least for me, walking in, I was hesitant about the idea of rolling with men, in particular, and so we'll talk a bit about that as well. Just kind of go over some of these barriers that we might face in terms of actually getting onto the mat and putting in the work to progress.
Right. So initially, when we got introduced to rolling, I remember it as this foreign concept. And everybody talked about it, and you heard the term, and you can imply what it means, and, you're going to be rolling around, clearly. So something similar to wrestling. I think if you don't know jiu-jitsu, you do know wrestling, because that's portrayed in a lot of movies and books and magazines, I guess. So hearing it throughout the gym, it has this tenseness to it, because you know it's coming, and normally they leave you until the end of class to do however many extended minutes of rolling.
That's something that I found true in other gyms as well.
They do that
I've gone to, they follow a similar trajectory in their class of warm-ups, then training the technique for like a good chunk of the class, and then doing the rolling at the end.
Right. Well, you played softball, so is it something similar like that? Like,
No.
how was your training, I guess, because I didn't play a sport, so I never had the structure.
Or like a structure.
Right,
I mean,
like
I think warm-ups is pretty universal for athletes, right? That you're always going to warm up at the start of a practice. Softball is different because everyone's doing different things, right? So there's batting, there's catching, field work. I was a pitcher, so for me, most of my practice was pitching, and that's a very solo activity, just me and my catcher kind of hanging out and working through.
Well, I guess probably
like
the book of softball is shorter than the book of jiu-jitsu.
Yes.
Or many other sports.
Probably,
anyways.
yeah. But, I mean, I think, the warm-ups are there, and then at least in the times where I traveled in the Pacific Northwest for a short trip, and then when I was back in Chicago visiting my family, I went to gyms in both locations, and they both followed the same setup. So I think it's pretty standard.
To leave the rolling till the end.
Yeah.
Just leave that pit feeling in your stomach.
Yeah.
Even now I kind of still am feeling anxious towards rolling, especially knowing who you're going to roll with, what it's going to look like, how many people, for how long, how tired you're going to be. In the very beginning, it was something that took the most energy out of you. And
it still takes the most energy out of me of the entire night when the rolling is, 5 minutes of rolling is the equivalent, I think, of all the sweat for the rest of the class.
Yes.
But that first night when we walked in, you rolled at the end of the class. I didn't.
Yeah, so they offered to us, you guys are new, you can roll or not roll, you can watch, blah, blah, blah. So you decided to sit, and I was like, I guess I'll go in. Let's see. And I went against another girl, which was nice. And I don't think I rolled with anybody else.
No.
It was just her. So I remember thinking that she was super good. I was like, oh my god, I'm terrible. I don't know what I'm doing.
But that's because you actually don't know what you're doing.
We really didn't.
And I think that's such an important thing to know going into it, is that you are going to just kind of look and act like an idiot, because everything you do is just nonsensical motions of your arms. Like, you're trying to survive without any knowledge of how to survive.
Yeah. And you're just like kind of flailing. You're trying to survive, and you know that there's a technical way to do things, but you don't know the technical way. So you know that you look even more stupid because you're trying to do some sort of version of it.
And most of your instincts are wrong. Like, that was one of the first things I learned.
You're right.
Is that most of my instincts, well, I mean, first of all, I was not that used to being that close, like, physically with somebody in that kind of dynamic. And I do think this is an important thing for women, potentially, is that a lot of girls grow up not being encouraged to kind of roughhouse. And I know you and your family were, and my dad used to kind of like mess around with us kids as well.
Yeah, we loved wrestling.
But it's not as common as, or as encouraged as it is with boys, right? To kind of like roll around and like kind of like beat each other up. So I think just having that physical proximity and being prompted to exhibit that aggression is a very new experience for a lot of females who are walking into the gym. And a lot of your instincts, like I said, you find out are wrong. Like, I remember, for me, if someone's like attacking me, I want to like curl away from them and protect my face. But then we know the absolute worst thing to do is give someone your back.
Yes.
Because then you're fucked. Like, you can't, like, it's really hard to
It
get out of
reminds
that.
me of the takedowns that we just recently did, and you put your head either in between their legs or on the outside of their legs. And one way is detrimental because they can guillotine choke you if your head is on the outside. But your instinct to take somebody down is just go straight through their legs and just, roughhouse them over, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's more comfortable to like have your head to their side and like nuzzle it into their belly button region.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's definitely easier to not have your head in between somebody's legs and also simultaneously try and take them to the floor.
Good life advice, guys.
Yes.
But that first class, I remember I hadn't really met you at that point because we kind of connected after when we were signing up for the trial.
Signing our life away.
But I was like, man, that girl's crazy. Like, I was looking over to her and was like, I'm not doing that. No, it's not going to happen.
And look at you now, choking me day and night.
Day and all the time, 24/7. But it was that my first time was maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks after, because I didn't go back right away.
Well, you know what they did to us? That was just our favorite thing to be thrown into, was King of the Mat.
Yeah.
And we did this pretty frequently our first couple of weeks there, which is them lining everybody up in the class on the wall, putting 3 more experienced members on the mat, and they just go along the line. Whoever's going next going to pair with whatever person is on the mat, and
you start the fight from a standing position. Yeah.
And you just have to survive.
That was an amusing period of time.
And we were like, how long can we last today?
5
6 seconds?
5
I lasted 7 this time.
Yeah, it was literally just a matter of moments until you found yourself flat on your back.
Yeah.
And I was talking to someone the other night that actually it's so absurd looking back on it, because we didn't know how to fall properly at that time. We didn't know how to do anything. So I would leave at night and wake up the next morning feeling like I'd been in a car crash. Like, I felt like I had whiplash, I had like bruises, I was sore.
Not that you don't have bruises all over you still to this day.
Just a cheetah. But
seeing yourself and
that
feeling
was the
yourself.
start. That was the start. I was more sore at that time. I feel like now, after jiu-jitsu class, I'm less physically sore. I will still have bruises, but I think my body's kind of made that adjustment to being thrown around and kind of pushed in weird positions.
I notice it when we take a break. When I had Christmas break this past couple of weeks and then I came back, you feel more sore the first couple times back in because you haven't been thrown to the floor like 27 times in 1 week.
And so I think in the beginning, and like you said, I still feel a little bit nervous now too when I walk into a class. But I think there's a lot of mental strength that we can cultivate kind of going into those scenarios, because you have to suspend your fear. You can't go into it afraid, because otherwise you're just going to be ineffectual. You're not going to do
or
anything.
shit your pants, either way.
That's pretty dramatic. Maybe though, yeah.
Not speaking from personal experience.
I haven't seen that happen before. But I do think you kind of have to, at least initially, I remember that's what I had to do. I had to be like, I'm here, paid a shit ton of money to like come to these classes, so I need to just go out there on the mat and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to throw everything else aside and walk into it with that mentality.
Well, I feel like mentality is something so crucial to our sport. And rolling, it's something like a switch that you have to turn on the mindset that this is something that's going to be super frustrating, because you're going to be exerting a lot of energy. You're literally trying to get out of a position. Imagine you're locked in the closet and you're trying to jiggle the door, you're trying to get out, you're kicking the door, it's not working. That's where you're at when you're rolling, because you keep trying.
Meanwhile, like someone's strangling you and you're in like a heavy jacket.
Yes, you can't breathe too much. There's like no air in there. Yes. So you're if you let your frustration get to you, then you're gonna get angry, and then you're not gonna be in this ultimate good state of cool, calm, collected, which is what you need to be, because it's so easy for frustration and for even exhaustion to cloud your mind to where you can't think rationally and logically, especially for the technique that you just learned. Yeah. So if you're trying to apply the knowledge that you just learned in class, if you're frustrated, if you're angry, if you're out of breath, you're going to be out of breath, but if you're not aware of these things and actively, pushing them to the side, your rolls aren't going to be great. And you're not going to feel great either afterwards. Because you're going to be out of breath, and it's going to be like,
frazzled. Yeah,
you're just going to be like, what just happened the past 5 minutes?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, because the goal of rolling obviously is to grow and to learn more in your practice of jiu-jitsu. So you train the technique, and really if you don't practice applying it, it's just going to fall out of your head. There's really, in my opinion, a kind of limited benefit in just training the technique without rolling. Like of course when people are injured or something like that, they'll train technique without rolling. That's good. Better than doing nothing.
Agreed.
But I think to actually attempt to master, become competent at a move or a technique or a skill, you have to experience it in as close to a real life situation as possible.
Well, it's just like being tested. And on a side note, we have testing tomorrow, so we'll get to see what we look like on the mat for an hour straight of 5-minute rolling. But in school, you get tested after however much period of learning stuff, and it's in that state of, okay, it's, door is locked, get out your pencil, everybody be quiet, now it's go time. So you have to do your rolls to get to that go time, to see where you're at, to see where your strengths are, and most likely to see where your weaknesses are, at least in my case.
Mine as well.
And then go home and plan out, do this kind of, we were talking about problem solving and how on the mat you have to be a problem solver. That's ultimately what we're doing. And if you try a move, it either works or it doesn't. And then you say, well, why didn't it work, or why did it work? And then those are where you can go home and think about it a little bit more when you're not, red-faced and just ready to go home and sweaty.
Yeah.
And then kind of improve your game plan each time. And like they said, there's so much to learn. So what this is what we've been coached to. Like, I'm definitely not a guru on jiu-jitsu, but you just want to find one move that you want to improve on, hone in on it, go in every day, practice it, and then once you get good at that, add in one more, and then add in a couple more. That way all of the things that you can learn don't overwhelm you so much.
Yeah, and I think that it's a good mentality to have probably for a long time in your jiu-jitsu journey, because at the beginning you might think, I don't know how to do anything, and you're learning
I did think.
Yeah, and we're learning these techniques that kind of go in one ear and out the other, because just everything about it is different than what we're used to. But even at the beginning, your goal can be, I'm just going to try to turn in to people when I'm underneath them. Like for me, that was a huge thing to instinctually kind of rewire within myself that
Right.
when you're on your back, you don't give them your back. You turn into them. You want to turn towards the person
It's
who's
like
attacking you.
counterintuitive.
Yeah.
I want to add a note on one ear, out the other, because it reminded me of watching them demonstrate. In the beginning, you watch them perform it maybe 5 or 6 times, and you go to do it, and you just don't know what you're doing. You wave the coach over, tell them to come and put your arms where they need to be, and now after they demonstrate it a couple of times, they're like, does anybody need to see it one more time? I'm like, nope, I think we got it. And then we go, we practice it, and we pretty much got it.
Our brains have adjusted to a new style of learning.
Right,
Yeah.
So whether it's your technique of triangle choke and drilling that every day and seeing it, in a couple months you will have your triangle choke.
Yeah.
Same with watching your instructors. In a couple months, you will be able to go back to your partner and do relatively what they showed you.
Yeah, and I think it just gives a good degree of focus as well going into a role, that you're thinking, okay, like for me, like you just mentioned, I focus a lot on the triangle choke.
Yeah.
And when I go into a role, I know, okay, this is what I'm looking for, and I'm just practicing it over and over and over again with the hopes that eventually I'll be competent at that submission, you know? And then on the flip side, I'm working a lot on getting out of side control and shrimping and making space. So sometimes I even ask people if we're doing more of a flow roll, like a slower kind of maybe situational or like 50% roll where you're just kind of moving with your partner. I'll ask them to put me in side control specifically so that I can work.
That's brave of you. That is brave. Just to accept being smashed from the start and then trying to get out of it. But it's a great way to learn.
I think
the best way.
It helps calm the nerves, I think, when you go into it, because you have a plan. You know, you don't know what the other person's going to do, what they're going to throw at you, but you know, my side coming in, these are the things I'm focusing on this week in my roles. These are the things that I want to improve on.
Well, we know exposure therapy is a thing, right? So if you're scared of getting compressed to death, just compress yourself as much as you can, and then you won't be scared of it.
And I think related to that, at least for me, a major fear initially was rolling with men. I was pretty hesitant about doing that because of the close physical contact, their size, and also just on the basis that I'm new and I didn't really know what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I think it is a different experience rolling with a guy than rolling with a girl. I mean, you can't really take the biological factors out of the equation, you know? Like you might be wearing a gi that covers almost everything, but you still have boobs, you still got a dick, and you kind of have to maneuver through those.
Yeah, no, there's definitely been like ass and face moments and like just head and, you know, it just...
I remember one situation, and people should not take this as indicative of what happens every time you roll with a guy, because I roll with guys often, and there are some guys who I really enjoy rolling with, where you know, it's I learn from them, or it's just a good competition, like whatever it might be. But this one person who I was rolling with, I had got him into a position where I was in the mount position, which I was super psyched about because that's a good position to be in. And I went to put pressure, and all of a sudden, I just felt his penis, like, so clearly there between my legs that I immediately shot up, which is the opposite of what you're supposed to do in mount, because it's all about compression and being close. And I just didn't know what to do. I think I even probably, like, squeaked a little bit.
It's like your instant reaction.
My instant reaction is...
a squeal.
A squeal, and... it was very uncomfortable, and I didn't know what to do, and I couldn't actually be effective in rolling.
In your dominant position.
Yeah, it was a very strange
but I would
situation.
say that's more fluke than...
Yes.
Right? Like, obviously, we're in close quarters, and a lot of the times you're moving around so quickly, and you're so focused about what you're doing. A lot of times they even tell you close your eyes, so you don't even know where your arm is, where your head is, so a lot of the parts don't really make a difference.
And I think I became very reassured because of our coach, who was very considerate of the fact that for girls it can be uncomfortable to roll with men, and that also some men don't know how to roll with girls. And it shouldn't really be that much of a distinction, but there is a consciousness that you go into when rolling of being aware of who you're rolling with, who you're training with, because it is in that situation, you're not on the streets fighting, you're not in a competition, you're both there to learn. And so you want to interact with the person in a way that benefits both of you. And sometimes maybe they're not aware of their strength, they're not aware of their size, or they have some ego issues, and rolling with them then becomes more of a danger than something that's productive.
And maybe we don't fully know the guy, not maybe, we definitely don't know exactly what their perspective on it as well. I bet they have certain hurdles that they have to overcome.
We're going to bring Austin on the show so he
Yeah.
can talk about rolling with girls.
Yes, and we can get some much needed clarification and insight. But you can still choose your partners carefully and see how your strengths match up to their weaknesses, and you're always going to learn in your roles regardless. So even if they're a guy or way bigger than you, way smaller than you, way younger than you, you should learn to adjust yourself too. Like, we have a few girls that we go against where we find ourselves easing up a little bit because we can notice that we need to
stronger,
or,
bigger.
Yeah, I think it's overall just being conscientious of what you're going against, just to make it the most equal that it can be, because we aren't in our weight class every single time that we're going against somebody.
Yeah, and I think also, we talk about it a lot, how lucky we are to have the gym that we go to, where a lot of the guys are very chill. They're very respectful,
100%.
considerate. For those who are more advanced, they're very willing to instruct and to teach,
right?
Which is a great experience.
And I would say that's every martial arts guy. That's every guy, like that. I don't think anyone wants to go in unconsiderate and whatever it is. I think there's only a select few, a small population that just don't know exactly how to approach the situation in the right way, and that's where their downfalls are.
I think you have a more optimistic view of the male species than I do. But we'll leave it up for debate. We'll wait to hear the guy's perspective on it.
Fair enough.
But I do think, as Karina was saying, that you can choose your partners carefully. I do think that we have to remember that we have the ability to say no. That if something is making us uncomfortable, if we're really not wanting to do something, we're an adult, we're an empowered individual, and we can say, no, I don't feel comfortable doing this, or no, I don't want to do this. And for me, that's still something that I work through, because I really wanted to become equipped with martial arts so that I could reinforce saying no physically, right? That somebody can't push me around or do something I don't want just based on, their physical force, and I'm equipped to defend myself. But then in that same scenario where I'm learning it, I'm hesitant to say no because of a certain perceived perception of what people might think about
and
me.
it's funny because I feel like I'm on the opposite spectrum of you, where I came into this as, something fun, like I really want to wrestle and get down and, just
roll around
down a hill.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily have a problem saying no. If anything, I have a problem with saying yes too much, and just like I'll roll with whoever, like bigger, smaller, whatever. Like, yeah, let's do it. I'm not gonna say no, but it teaches me that I actually do have the opportunity to, and the final say so, and our coaches back us up on it. So they're on our side through and through, and I think that's something that's super comforting. Just in general, and we do have such a nice gym and such a nice community around us.
Yeah.
That it's safe.
And communication is key. Like you said, our coaches have our back. When you go into a role, you communicate to your partner. If you have an injury, if you're wanting to work on something, all of these things help to build a strong community with whoever you're training with, and trust. That you trust the other person. That okay. We're going to go into situations where we're literally trying to kill each other.
Right.
But I trust that, you're going to do your best
To not kill
hurt
me.
Yeah, to not hurt me in the pursuit of that.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really interesting and special kind of intimacy that you develop in those moments with people. That is pretty unique.
Yeah, having
To
sex with
Rollin.
strangers on the street.
Having sex with strangers on the
It's
street.
just like it,
just
man.
like jiu-jitsu.
So
Yeah.
hopefully you guys can understand our gist of rolling and maybe take what we say with a grain of salt, as we are stripeless white belts on our way.
The hope is that we'll continue to roll
Yes.
and continue to improve. And I think a lot of what we want to share in this podcast is just that journey and how we grow from where we were and where we are now and where we're going to be in the future. So whether it's on the mat
or off the mat.
we'll see you next week.